Hello everyone and welcome back to our special village. I am so happy that you're here with me today. We have a very important topic to discuss, and it is the topic of your child's educational rights under special education law. And why this topic today? I know we've spoken about this so many times before. At least I have. I know this. And the reason that I want to bring this up again is because I have heard of violations of two very important sections of the law, which are your child's right to the least restrictive environment and your child's right to a free, appropriate public education. So let's dive in and see a little bit more of what these two things actually mean. So when we talk about the least restrictive environment, one thing to keep in mind is the Continuum of Services. And we had spoken about the Continuum of Services in this channel before. I am going to leave a link to the previous video that we did on the Continuum of Services. It's important to know that services are provided generally from least restrictive to more restrictive. And typically when we say least restrictive, we're talking about providing some services within the general education classroom. And when we're talking about most restrictive, we're talking about something like residential placement for children who need a lot of support. Now, what does this mean for you or for your child? Does this mean that your child's least restrictive environment is always going to be the general education classroom? And it's going to be the general education classroom with no services whatsoever? No, it doesn't. The least restrictive environment is the least restrictive environment for any particular child. So when we're assessing the needs of a particular child, what we're doing is we're assessing what the least restrictive environment for that child would be. So for one child, the least restrictive environment would be probably something very little restrictive, like a general education classroom with just some related services. Whereas for some other child, the least restrictive environment may be a special class in a special school. And it would be an environment completely different. For that child that needs a special class in a special school, putting that child in a general education classroom would actually be very restrictive because that child would not be able to manage his needs there. And again, I'm bringing this up today because I heard of quite a few instances and I'm going to say it, in the New York City Department of Education, where a particular office, where you go, when you need placement for your children, for the entire city, and they have several different offices throughout the city. But what they interpret as the least restrictive environment is always the general education classroom. So what happens? Say, for example, you walk in there from another state, even from another country, and you have a child with very specific needs that you know because you've experienced this in your state or in your country or wherever it is that you're coming from. You experience this and you know that your child needs very specific services, and you know that a regular classroom would not be able to serve the needs of your child. So what happens? I've heard that in quite a few instances, this office has been sending children with very specific needs that need very specific instruction in a very specific type of structure to the school basically across the street, to the school that's nearest to their home, to their zone school, as they say. This is not best practice. This may be policy for them, but it's definitely not best practice, and it is definitely not what the law says. Yes, they may tell you they will eventually figure out what your child needs at the school with a proper meeting with all the clinicians. Just keep in mind that they can do that before your child starts school. And you don't have to be subjected to, your child doesn't have to be subjected to an environment that's extremely restrictive for him or her. If he or she has the right to be in the least restrictive environment from day one. So when they tell you, oh no, that's not our job is just to send you to your zone school, you can say, well, I know that the law protects my child. My child has the right to the least restrictive environment from day one. Another concept that's important to know is that your child has the right to a free, appropriate public education. So what happens if there are no funds in the school system to provide for what your child needs? Say, for example, your child needs speech therapy, and the school where your child is does not have the speech therapist or the means to provide the speech therapy for your child. So say, for example, your child is supposed to have speech therapy 3 times a week, but they can only service 2 times a week. They can't say, sorry, we don't have it. They must provide the remedy for you. So sometimes that comes in the form of a letter where you can go to a particular set of therapists where the Department of Education or the district is supposed to pay for that service because your child is entitled to that. Your child is entitled to a free, appropriate public education. What happens if your child is supposed to be in a more restrictive environment? Say, for example, your child is placed in a school that doesn't serve his or her needs, but the IEP is something very different. Or you know that your child needs a school that is a lot more structured, that can service his needs or her needs so much more. That would be, in short, less restrictive for him or her. Well, the school district or the Department of Education is supposed to pay for that, okay? So it's not that easy. It's not as easy as it seems. And parents usually do have to fight for this. They have to prove that whatever the Department of Education or the district is providing for them at this point is not enough. It's not sufficient. It's not the least restrictive environment for their child, and their child is entitled to a free, appropriate public education. They have to prove that the education that they're receiving right now is really not appropriate. And so in that instance, they can file to get services for their children free of charge somewhere else. So I hope this serves as a guide for you, and I hope that at least it empowers you, because I don't want you to think that when someone tells you, I'm sorry, but we don't have that. I'm sorry, but this is what we do. This is our policy. That you are just going to think that, well, there's nothing that I can do as a parent. I want you to know that there's so much you can do as a parent. There's so much that you can do as a family. And your child is entitled to all of this and so much more. So if you have any comments or any questions, please don't hesitate to write them here below this video. And I will make sure that I answer them to the best of my knowledge and the best way I can. And I'll see you, I guess, next time for another installment of Your Child's Rights. Have a wonderful evening.